pray with me? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts be acceptable to you, O God, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. This morning's gospel lesson is not one of Jesus' greatest hits. I came to bring fire on the earth, and oh, how I wish it were already kindled. Do you think that I have come to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. Yikes, Jesus. What happened to peace on earth, goodwill to all people? This is a difficult text, to be sure. And you know, years ago, I used to read it thinking that it was offensive, scandalous, even heartbreaking. These days, well, it really just sounds like Thanksgiving dinner. It's hard for us to hear that Jesus is willing not just to accept, but perhaps to encourage division within families. We prefer to picture Jesus sitting with Aunt Sally, right, crying into her cranberry sauce, saying, why can't we all just get along? But instead, he is over there with Uncle Albert, pouring another drink and egging on the fight. Perhaps we can find a little consolation in the fact that Jesus' words here are descriptive rather than prescriptive. That is, Jesus is teaching us about the way things are in the world, not giving us instructions for how we ought to live. Division among families is not the goal of Jesus' ministry, but it does tend to be one of its consequences. Countercultural teachings like blessed are the poor, love your enemies, and turn the other cheek will always set some people's teeth on edge. The fact is that coming to trust in Jesus presents a crisis in the life of a believer. Not a crisis like a disaster or an emergency, but crisis in the original sense of the Greek word krisis, that means judgment. A moment of decision, a turning point. Biblical scholar Fred Craddock continues this line of thought. He retranslates a passage in John's Gospel to proclaim that Jesus is the crisis of the world. Crisis does not mean emergency, he continues, but that moment or occasion of truth about life and decision about life. An adequate image is that of the gable of a house. Two raindrops strike the gable, and that moment could conclude with there being oceans apart. To be placed in the situation of decision is in fact critical, crisis. For to turn towards one person or goal or value means to turn away from another. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of crisis, of decision point this week, as I've been reading with my book club through David Kurtzer's book, The Pope at War. It's an exploration of the life and ministry of Pope Pius XII, everyone's favorite pope, right? He was the pope during World War II, and the book looks specifically at his relationships with Mussolini and with Hitler. Kurtzer asks and seeks to answer a question that has been hotly debated in the years since the war. Did the Pope really do everything in his power to prevent and intervene in the Holocaust? Kurtzer explores both the private and public interactions between Pius XII and Hitler as the war and genocide progressed. When did the Pope condemn Hitler's actions? And when did he stay silent? When did he act? And when did he choose to look the other way? I've not finished the book yet, so I can't tell you Kurtzer's final answer. Stay tuned. But I can tell you that reading this book is forcing me to wrestle with the uncomfortable truth that sometimes we just can't have it both ways. We cannot fraternize with Nazis on Monday and then stand up for Jews on Tuesday. There are times in life, crises, when we really do have to choose one way or another. And sometimes there is a wrong choice. My friend Larissa recently wrote an article that's been circulating in Presbyterian circles called The Mirage of the Purple Church. This phrase, purple church, if you're not in with the terminology, describes a faith community that seeks to be a home for people from both sides of the political aisle. Red plus blue equals purple. And on the surface, that sounds like a really good thing, doesn't it? Churches are meant to be places where diverse people of all different backgrounds are joined together by our common faith. We seek to build, and we so cherish, community that focuses on what unites us rather than what divides us, for there are increasingly few places in our world where we can still find real, genuine fellowship that reaches across the aisle. But there is a danger in the purple church, Larissa writes, the danger of making an idol out of our comfort level. If we prioritize not trying to offend anyone, we risk not following the gospel. For as Jesus reminds us in this morning's reading, the gospel is divisive and offensive. I came not to bring peace, but division, he says. I came to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. Feels pretty kindled these days, doesn't it? But really, the problem with the purple church, Larissa writes, is the same problem we have with purple as a color. It doesn't actually exist. Purple, it turns out, is an illusion. Did you know that? Because I didn't. When our eyes see red and blue, colors from opposite ends of the spectrum of visible light, our brains get confused. They can't make sense of the conflicting wavelengths, so they solve the problem by creating a color that doesn't actually exist. Purple. There's no such thing as purple to color. Perhaps there's no such thing as the purple church. And maybe that's because there's no such thing as purple people. Each of us comes to this place, right, with our own unique identities and deeply held convictions, with our brokenness and our flaws. The church, Larissa writes, is one of the last places where we are asked to bring all that we are and all that we hope to be. It is a place where we carry with us what is acceptable to the world, as well as those parts we are often pressured to hide. This is a holistic community, a space where our supposed messiness is honored, which makes us who God has created us to be. We could try to take off those identities when we come to worship together, to leave our more nuanced selves at the door and put on purple. Sometimes we do. But friends, I do not think that's who God calls us to be. Much harder, but perhaps much more faithful, is sitting with one another in the complexity of our individual and communal identities, letting our whole selves rub up against one another, letting our ideas and opinions contradict each other, without falling in to the melting pot, maybe the idol of false unity. It's not easy, that's for sure. And I, for one, haven't a clue how to do it. Following Jesus precipitates crisis in our lives. The point where we really do have to choose the harder way. Will we follow Christ